Okay. So module 2, finding your harmony through the neuroscience of peace, harmony, and joy. And we'll look to simplify that long title. So the triune brain, now this was coined by this Paul MacLean in the 60s, and it was adapted by this Dr. Danny Friedland, who wrote about leading well from within, from alignment. And then through a program I was associated with Adair Cates called Awakening Conscious Leadership, which I very much appreciated. So this is a conglomeration of Paul's work, Danny's work, Adair's work, and then with my further adaptation. So when you use it, we'll have a whole line of attributions here to give proper credit here. But the triune brain relates to three parts of your brain that Paul MacLean actually just looked to kind of simplify things. And, again, all models break down, but there is something to this model that we can actually begin to see how peace, harmony, and joy relates to, you can say, our nervous system, the neuroscience of our nervous system. So we have the brain stem, and our brainstem is involved with keeping our, you can say, our blood pressure regulated, our heart rate in its right way. It's almost like it relates to our survival mechanisms. And you can say our survival mechanisms can relate to a sense of safety. And safety, I think we can cotton on to the fact safety can relate to peace. So part of our brain relating to peace. And then we have our midbrain, the limbic system. I'm sure you probably have heard of that, which relates to our emotional brain or relating to our sense of belonging. And that relates to what we're looking to focus on tonight is our sense of harmony. And then our prefrontal cortex, which is a vital part of our nervous system, sitting right behind our forehead, or right in our forehead. This relates to actually having perspective, understanding. And then when we have perspective and understanding, you can say we have realizations that bring joy. So we look at peace, harmony, and joy. But then along with realizations and joy, you can say it gives us a sense of significance. And this has been coupled with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're looking at safety as a base, love and belonging, and then significance, or Maslow would talk about self-actualization. But when we have a greater self-actualization, we realize the significance that we do have individually and collectively. So that's the neuroscience there, looking at peace, harmony, and joy. Again, there's a lot more to consider, but to put it in perspective of what we're considering. So let's look at this. So when we're unstressed, you can say when we're practicing coherence in quiet times, our prefrontal cortex, right in our forehead, is in control. It actually has an influence with our limbic, our central center of our brain, our brain stem. It has a controlling influence. It has you can say tight control of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. So this is where we want to live, have our prefrontal cortex in control. Or when stress comes along, what happens is things begin to fire forward and crowd out. You can say physiologically our prefrontal cortex, which can crowd out our sense of perspective, our sense of understanding. But things begin to go, you can say, haywire within our thoughts. This is when we have weaker control of our thoughts and emotions and actions. And I thought these pictures really bring something out in terms of seeing how we work brain-wise, that our prefrontal cortex needs to be in control. Otherwise, things can actually crowd out our prefrontal cortex. And this is also created by Amy Arnston, PhD of Yale Medical School, and as presented through the Awakening Conscious Leadership Program of Adair Cates. So I thought this is a good picture to take a look at. Okay, and then let's look at our autonomic nervous system. So again, our autonomic nervous system, another way of describing it is our automatic nervous system. When you eat something, it's our autonomic nervous system immediately goes to work, but there's two parts of it. There's a sympathetic part and then the parasympathetic. The sympathetic part basically speeds our body up. It's these yellow nerves. See the yellow nerves there? And then the blue nerves are what slows your body down. Now, what happens is we want to live more in a parasympathetic dominant that's not overly parasympathetic dominant, but it's when we are in a health and healing mode, a regenerative mode. Okay. The nerves are actually thicker. The parasympathetic nerves are actually thicker, and they're designed to run most of the time, 90 to 95% of the time that they're meant to run our nervous systems. However, the thinner nerves are more prone to inflammation if they're overrun, but that's the lifestyle of the day. Today, Thursdays could be hectic, or even this week, or our lives, and we're on overdrive, or these yellow nerves are being overstressed, and they're not meant to carry the current of energy the way the blue nerves are meant to carry. Okay? This is when we begin to feel, you can say, fried at times, because we're overextending ourselves, we're overamping ourselves. I use the term. Okay? Where we want to have control. We want to have a fire that burns within us, but doesn't burn us out. And part of that is learning how to have our parasympathetic system more in control. Okay, so our brain and nervous system is dependent on our conscious state, on your conscious state, on my conscious state. And this is where we look at the triune brain: safety, love and belonging, significance. So I'm going to share a little meditation that's from this ancient derivations there, but the meditation goes like this. So talking about how do we get our conscious state in a state of balance. And these are some things to consider for meditation. May I be safe. May I belong. May I understand. And to actually feel those statements within ourselves. May I be safe. May I belong. May I understand. And this is from, some of you may know, it's a loving kindness meditation. And last week we talked about the myth of Eden. And we talked about black belt, considering that it's, sensing that it actually something rings true there. So I sense that this loving kindness meditation has ancient origins and echoes of the myth of Eden. And you can sense that maybe for yourself. May I be safe. May I belong. May I understand. Okay, let's continue on here. Okay, so our harmony and community. So we're going to look at this from the bottom up tonight here. Last week, we talked about from the top down. You can say the essence of ourselves is peace, harmony, and joy. That needs to be felt in our hearts and aligned with our mind. But looking at it in terms of this, we're wired to connect. Maybe you've heard of that term. Each of us is wired to connect with others. But then things come along. Internally unresolved hurts, traumas, misunderstandings interfere with our sense of association, belonging. And then because of that, there could be a tendency to withdraw, limit interactions, or just go it alone. So much time could be wasted being sorry of the past. And then a change in the sense of letting your life be redirected. So to live in the present rather than the future or in the past, to live present, to love the present, to swallow up the love in the present. In the coherent, receptive flow of the space of now. So the space of now, this coherent flow. Again, we talked about heart math last week, and to have our heart rate variability rhythms looking like this, being in the flow, in the space of now. On the one side, the past, and the other side, the future. Alignment. Joe mentioned alignment, being in alignment from above, down, inside, out with others. And helping with alignment relates to presencing practices. Presencing practices, heart focused breathing, and there's a variety of other presencing practices. What I'm going to go over with you next is a presencing practice that's discerned in my consciousness. And it's a way of actually, you could say, regulating ourselves. And you might see this a little more in detail, but let me just begin here. So I call it the conscious clearing messenger RNA process, used as needed to restore your sense of belonging, connection, and harmony. So I have a glass of water here. So I love sharing this. So again, we want to be in alignment. messenger. You can say each of us is a messenger of light, and that light needs to be felt in our hearts, and then our mind holding our hearts in ways to keep that there, and attitudes of thankfulness and appreciation, patience. And then our body, this is representing our body and out through our body. So that messenger of light getting out through our, you can say, our capacities of heart, mind, and body, being in alignment. But when things come, you can say something unexpected out of the blue. Our heart may contract and we have that oh no feeling. Our mind gets twisted. It's a time to recognize when we're in this state and to recognize we have a choice. If we don't recognize, we'll default to taking offense, holding grudges, cynicism. You know how it works, withdrawal, shutting down. So again, being conscious, we're talking about being conscious of a choice when this happens, when something out of the blue, unexpected happens, and our heart contracts, our mind gets twisted. We need to be deliberate in terms of uprighting ourselves. Again, if we just upright ourselves spine-wise, it begins the process. And then as we've been going over, heart focused breathing, or breathing at least, breathing in slow, out slower, holding steady. Okay, holding steady. I'll have a little more about that, expanding on what Laura said before, holding steady. But then we've heard this, it is what it is. As quick as we can get to the point, it is what it is. Remembering and affirming what you love. So actually uprighting yourself, breathing as long as it takes, holding steady, recognize it is what it is, and then being able to remember and affirm what you love. Now, sometimes you might have to breathe a lot or hold it there. Sometimes it's not easy to get rid of things that might be catching you by the throat, but just hold it steady until you remember and affirm what you love. That's why I encourage each of us to cultivate an emotional inventory, emotional coherent inventory. So we have readily available things in our consciousness that we can access, that allows us to access those points of the things we love. So yielding, opening up to that, yielding to it. And then it brings perspective. And then it brings a sense of spaciousness, relaxation. And when there's spaciousness and relaxation, you can say that it brings understanding. With understanding comes forgiveness. And I think a big thing is actually forgiving ourselves when we actually go off or our heart contracts. Sometimes it's the hardest to forgive ourselves. But then if there's a need to forgive someone else involved, this is the process of clearing the field, clearing the field. And this is where we neutralize. This is where we basically neutralize the contraction within ourselves. And it clears the field to remember, to appreciate the integrated part you play with all of each of us, appreciating the integrated part I play, you play with all, restoring your sense of belonging, connection, harmony. So you get back to being that light influence. And ultimately, restoring your sense of peace and joy, your harmony, peace, and joy. So instead of that oh no feeling when things come up, you have a feeling, oh yes, here is my opportunity. Here's my opportunity to wax on, to wax strong in stature and influence, so that I can extend, shining the way for all in my world, playing my essential part, having a sense of destiny in that respect. The world depends upon me to keep shining my light, to keep shining my influence, keeps extending my influence. And then when we do that, come in a greater way, as we do that more and more, we come into a consciousness of the significance that we are, that you are, that I am, that you are. And we find our balance. We'll be talking about this next week, about being in the flow. We find our balance in terms of being at rest, and then in times when we need to be in action, we find the balance of that. And then it begins to have a sense of mastery in our living. We have an artist form of living expression. And there's words from a mentor of mine would say, you know what you express. Express peace, harmony, joy, and you know peace, harmony, and joy. Okay. Okay, I know that's a bit there to digest. And basically, I think this happens simultaneously to actually come back. But I just broke down the process that I can see in terms of pieces. But I think for all of us there's ways of actually we've come back to alignment. But to break it down in terms of just seeing some specifics, I thought I'd share this with you today. Okay. Susanna Culvert. So she's a Peace, Harmony, and Joy board member and the founder of the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. And she had this to say: in hindsight, I feel that all of my life's challenges were inviting me into lessons to remember my true nature and to be in service to my unique purpose. Instead of resisting challenges and difficulties, consider embracing them and asking what you need to learn to get through this. Look back on past challenges and lessons and reflect on how they gave you an important and unique perspective, something the world needs from you right now. So this was from a program, actually Chris and myself were part of, Less Joy, More Joy cohort program recently. And there'll be other programs along this way. So there's programs like a spawning, like Laura was saying, there's things happening where things are being in development, I mean, for you too, that we can be a part of, either offering or sharing in. This is one such program. Okay, so sense of belonging, connection, harmony, meditation. So again, I think, when my talks, sometimes Robert tells me I speak kind of fast because I know this stuff so well. Maybe it's may lose some of that. So if we just take a moment now to have a little belonging, connection, harmony meditation. So same way again, hand over your heart, upright yourselves. If you're comfortable, put your hand on your heart. Let's breathe together, breathing in slow and out slower. And being thankful to be able to share this and to recognize certain things that might strike us individually, to take note of those things and to feel the value of that, the significance of it, and feel that significance. Breathe that through your heart, breathing it in and breathing it out. Knowing that you have significance, knowing and recognizing the process of forgiveness, of understanding, of allowing each of us to play our part. Breathing in slow and breathing out slower. Again, acknowledging our sense of harmony, sense of joy and peace to be of significance in this day. The lessons we've learned, the influence we can extend uniquely, each of us uniquely into our world, integrated harmoniously with each of us and others. And let's breathe again, breathing in slow and out slower. Okay. Okay, very good. Let's come back here and continue on. So again, when we have some thoughts or insight training, it's good to reflect what we just learned or opened up to. So what insight has been most valuable to you? And then can you see possible applications in specific areas of your life? So maybe take a moment now and journal some thoughts in that respect.